I've written a program to tell you juicy details about Winston, but not too much because Winston likes to keep some mystery. That's just the Winston way. So let's see how I did this program. I created some variables at the top to store bits of information about him. The first variable holds a number, his age. The second variable holds a string, his eyes. The third variable holds an array of strings, which are things he likes doing. And the last two variables hold strings which describe where he was born. Then down here, I wrote each of these out using the text command and just using the variable name. And of course for the array, I have to access each element of the array using bracket notation. Cool. Now, all 5 of these variables are describing information about the same thing, Winston. But the variables don't know that they're about the same thing. In JavaScript, when we want to store multiple pieces of information that are related, we have a better way of storing them that's really cool, and it's called an object. So what it means is that instead of 5 variables, we could have a single variable that stores all this information, which is pretty cool. Let's try it out with Winston's information. First, we'll declare the variable, and we'll call it Winston. And then we put an open curly bracket, make sure it's curly, not square, and a semicolon. So we've created an object, but it has absolutely no information inside of it. So to add a bit of information, we need to add properties, and each property is a key and a value. For example, age would be age 19. Okay, and then for eyes, we're going to add a comma, and then eyes black. Okay, cool. So now Winston has 2 properties inside the object. For likes, we can just say likes, and then I'll just copy paste this from up here. Very nice. So let's look at this. Winston has 3 properties. Every property has a key, which is what's on the right-hand side, and a value, which is what's on the left-hand side. For the key, it should follow the same rules as JavaScript variable names. No spaces, start it with a letter, all that. For the value, it could be any type of value we've seen so far. It could be number, it could be string, it could be array. It could even be a Boolean. So we can add is cool, true, of course. In fact, the value could even be another object. So birth city and birth state. Those really are bits of information about the same thing, which is a single location. And so I think it'd make more sense if we stored it as an object. I'll add another key, birthplace, and then for the value, I'm going to put my curly brackets again. And then inside, I'll have key for city, say Mountain View, and then state, California. Great. So now you can see you can really store very rich information inside an object. All right, so now that we have this nice object that describes all this information about Winston, let's try deleting those old separate variables that didn't know about each other. Okay, so now we've got an error, and that's because our text commands are referencing the old variables. We need to update them to use the information from the object instead. Let's start with just commenting out the last 3 so that we can do one at a time. Okay, so it says Winston age right now. What we need to do is replace that. So we'll type Winston, because that's a variable name. Notice if we just leave it like that, it says object. That's really gross. That's JavaScript telling us that we're trying to turn an entire object into a string value. But instead, we really just want to access only the age inside of it. So what we do is we put a dot, and then we write the property key, which is age. Ta-da! We have the age. We call this dot notation, which is where we write the variable name for the object, and then a dot, and then the property key. Okay, so we can go and do more now. Let's uncomment this, and then instead of Winston eyes, we'll just say Winston.eyes. And then for this one, it'll be Winston.likes, and then Winston.likes1. And then for this last one, it's a little more complicated because it's an object inside an object. So we're going to say Winston, and then dot, birthplace. But if we do that, it's still just the whole object. So then we'd have to say dot, city. Okay, let's do this here. Winston, dot, birthplace, dot, state. Ta-da! So it's really cool because you can just reach down inside the objects that are in the objects. All right. Awesome. So as you can see, objects are a great way to store a bunch of related bits of information about an object and then be able to access it later. And when you keep going, you're going to find out just how awesome objects are.